All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What They Don't Want You to Know About Yoga. This is a broadcast presented by Yoga Skills, studio of Kemetic Yoga. Here we have with us Master Yasir Rahotep, and my name is Amawi. Thank you all for coming back and joining us. How are you doing this afternoon, Mr. Yasir?
I'm doing good. I'm just kind of hurried and harried as usual, because I've been doing so much. I've been taking so many phone calls since about 5 in the morning and trying to get prepared for the show at the same time. So,
Right,
but
right.
I'm doing good. You know, um,
Awesome.
I see Jelinsky, brother Aten Ra saying Hotep, brother.
Hello, welcome, Hotep. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm just going to get this out of the way. You guys, anything you want to know, put it in the comments, okay? Master Yasira Hotep is taking out his time to talk to us, to give us some wisdom, some history, more importantly. So, this is exclusive time. You are here in the live. You really have this access. So go ahead and ask him questions. We already have like a roster of things we wanted to talk about, but go ahead and post your questions in the comments if anything comes up in your mind. Seems like we got some people. And where are you guys streaming from? Are you guys in Chicago? Other places? Are
Is
you
that
at home?
is that a question to us, or that's a question you're asking?
It's a question I'm asking our viewers. Are you guys at
Uh,
home? Are you guys in the car? Let us know in the comments. Wonderful. We got Dallas in the house. Thank you, Amber.
oh,
Thank you
there
for
go
letting us know.
Amber,
Welcome.
the master hair educator,
Yes, love it. We need that. Those locks are beautiful.
the queen of hair, of natural hair.
Great, great, great. Well, I'm hoping Dallas is a little warmer than it is over here in Chicago. I'm not complaining yet, but it's a little chilly. You see, we got our jackets on.
Yeah, I had to put my sweater from Egypt on, my,
Oh, okay, that's where you
my
got that from.
kemetic hooded sweater.
Nice. You need to
My
bring
favorite
more of those
sweater.
back.
Except it don't have no buttons on it, so you can't. I don't know. I guess it's a style. They didn't put no
Yeah.
buttons on it. So,
Next
but
time you go, you definitely got to bring one back for me in green, though. A nice forest
green.
green.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll try to see if I can cajole. I had to cajole the owner of the store out of this one. So,
Nice. A little bit of haggling.
well,
Yeah.
he wanted to give me a gift, and I chose this one. He was like, and I was like, yeah, this is the one I want.
Love it. Awesome. We got the UK in the house. Wonderful. Welcome,
Julia
Julia.
Yearwood. I mean,
Thank
well, you got Julia. I shouldn't say her last name because she probably don't want her last name. But anyway,
you.
I know who that is. That's Julia. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Miss Julia. And wow, you in the UK, you guys are like 6 hours in front of us, right? So it's like
Yeah, it's
9.
later. It's later there than it is
Mhm.
here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking out the time to listen in. Appreciate you. Ooh, so let's go ahead and get this podcast started out with a wonderful question from Miss Amber. I'm going to put your question on the screen. Do you come across students who think Kemetic yoga is a religion? Let's get
Um,
into it. And then after he answers this, he's going to tell us about what Amenta means, because this podcast is called Journey to Amenta. So go ahead.
well, there's lots of people who think that yoga itself, yoga period, regardless what kind it is a religion because they equate it with Hinduism, and oftentimes the people who the people from India who practice yoga, they equate yoga as something that's part of the Hindu religion. And they often, so people pick up on that. And so they think that Kemetic yoga itself may be a religion or may have some religious connotation to it, which it doesn't. But what I try to do when I encounter that issue is that I just try to educate people, just like you might educate them about hair or why they should, about natural hair, like what it is and that it's not nappy, it's natural, so on and so forth. And so, and so I try to educate them on yoga in terms of as a health practice. I don't try to push yoga from a spiritual perspective or talk about it that much with the general public because they equate, the word spiritual with something else. They equate the word spiritual with religion or some type of belief in a particular deity or something. So I try to just bring yoga, especially kemetic yoga, from a health perspective. This is something that's going to help you to manage stress. This is something that's going to help you to lower your blood pressure. This is something, if you're a male, that's going to help you with your prostate problems. It's going to help you. It's going to help your children to learn how to focus and concentrate better, or even help you learn how to focus and concentrate better. So, so I try to approach yoga with people who are religious, who may be skeptical from a health and wellness and from a physiological perspective, what it's going to do for you in terms of the benefits. And I often find that that helps people. The other part too is when I talk about breathing, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about. And I talk about the significance of the breath, the significance of breathing. And so when you talk about the breath, you can talk about it from a biblical perspective, because you can give examples of yoga that's expressed in the Bible. So it says that God, took the earth, shaped into the shape of a person, and then breathed the breath of life into it. And that breath is what gave life. And so oftentimes when I'm speaking to people who are religious or Christian or whatever religion that they are, I bring that up, that that the books that people consider to be holy books, that people consider to be sacred texts, that they mention breathing, they mention the breath, and that in yoga we put extreme emphasis on breathing, and so when we're breathing, we are actually emulating the first step of the creation of man by the creator, the first step of the creation of human beings by the creator, when he took the earth, the dirt, the clay, shaped into the shape of a person, then breathed the breath of life. So so it's not religious, but that is also the spiritual aspect of yoga, that you are connecting yourself with this larger creative entity, this we call nature, that we call, and nature is just a metaphor for God. Nature is a metaphor for the creator. Nature is a metaphor for the source, you know. And so so those are approaches to take when that I think you can take when you are, dealing with people who may have a misconception about what yoga is, and they may think that it may violate part of their religion.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that question. Hopefully, Amber, he answered that question for you. But like I said in the beginning, if any of you have any questions for Master Yusira Hotep, please put them in the comments. I know that we can see the YouTube comments live, but I will definitely go ahead and check on LinkedIn and Facebook on my phone to make sure that any other questions that you guys have are being answered. You are listening to Journey to Amenta, and this series is called What They Don't Want You to Know About Yoga. So not just maybe what you don't know, but what they don't want you to know. So this is exclusive knowledge, exclusive history. And so, Master, can you please tell us what Amenta means?
Well, the word Amenta, right? The beginning, the word has two parts. Everybody has heard the word Amen, or like as Black people say, we say Amen, right? You go to church. At the end of your prayer, you say amen. When somebody says something that's is really motivating or inspiring, you say amen. You say that loud. Amen, amen. This is a kemetic word. Okay. And most of the time, I think when we say this word, even in our daily context as an exclamation or a ending point, to show agreement, or to show being in tune with particular thing that's being said, we don't really know what the origin of the word is. And so, from the Kemetic perspective, where the word comes from, the word Amen means the hidden one. It means that it refers to that force within the universe that is hidden, that is not seen, that is behind everything, but it's referring to something that's very powerful, but it's behind the scenes. Okay, it's in the background. Okay, so an example could be when we talk about quantum physics, right? And we talk about this concept called dark matter. When you look up in the sky at night, you see a sprinkling of stars, right? You see a sprinkling of heavenly bodies against a black background. And we assume that the stars are floating in space in emptiness, and that there's empty space between the heavenly bodies that you're looking at. But in actuality, according to physics, that what we call this empty space is actually full of something. And that something is what we call dark matter. It's a hidden force, it's a hidden entity, a hidden reality that is there, that is very powerful. And so what we call emptiness, what we call space, what we call blackness or darkness is actually full of something that our senses are not able to perceive, right? And so when we say Amenta, the word ta at the end, the two letters, because Amenta is Amenta. Ta means place or land, or a location of some sort. And so when we say Amenta, we're talking about a place which is hidden, something that is subconscious, subterranean, below the surface, that is not obvious, but is actually there and very powerful. And so a mentor is that place, that subconscious place, that hidden place, that place where everything actually comes from, that place where that generates everything that we call reality. That's where it comes from. It comes from a mentor. It comes from this hidden place. When we think of a mentor as a reference towards the unconscious, right? The unconscious mind, the subconscious mind. When we look at our mind, when we look at reality, or our consciousness, we have consciousness where we are, which relates to the concept of being aware. I am conscious. I am aware of what's happening. I'm open. I'm awake. I know what's happening. I know where I am. I know where I'm going. I know what's going on. We call that being conscious, right? You're not knocked out. You're not asleep. You're conscious. But we also know that the vast majority of our overall consciousness is the subconscious, that part of our consciousness which is not at the level of our awareness. Okay, so I hope that's making logical sense. That part of our consciousness which is not at the level of being aware of being mindful of, right? So we're not aware of this aspect. So say for example, um, if a person becomes traumatized because of some event that happens in their life, they move that experience into the subconscious. They move that experience into a hidden place because that helps to relieve the overt symptoms of distress that memory, generates. And so we move through life every day. Our eyes are seeing many things all the time. If you walk down the street, if you go into a mall, you go into a grocery store, you go into a forest, your eyes are seeing many things. You're perceiving many things around you. But your mind is, but your eyes are looking at more things, more phenomena than what your mind can actually process and analyze at one time. So that information, those images that you're seeing, goes into the subconscious. And so that's why you've heard of this concept where a person goes under hypnosis in order to help them to recall a memory of something that happened that they can't remember. So sometimes a person may see a crime, but they can't remember exactly what happened. So sometimes in the legal system, they may use hypnosis to help that person to recall, because that information, even though it's not in the conscious part of the mind, it's in the subconscious. And so it can be recalled, it can be brought up through hypnosis. So Amenta is referring to this reality that exists in nature, that exists in the physical, phenomenal world that we live in, and that also exists at the subconscious level in the mind. Okay, and so so when we say journey to journey to a mentor is a process of discovering and learning about your true nature, your true self, that aspect of yourself that you may have forgotten, that aspect of your power that you have to control the events and the situations of your life that you may have shut off or shut down because of your experiences that you've had in your in your life, because of your social conditioning, from education, from religion, from the media, from your experiences being, just being raised in this culture that tells you that you may be less than what you really are, you know. And it could be, it could be, you're being told that you're less than what you really are if you have black skin, dark skin, brown skin, yellow skin, red skin, if you are female, if you speak this language as opposed to that language, if you have this income as opposed to that income, you have all of these different social, cultural, political, economic forces that are shaping our consciousness and making us feel as if we are powerless, as if we don't have the ability to do certain things, to be certain things, right? Religion tells us that if we dream of something before it happens, some religions often call that experience the devil came into you. And this is the information that you're receiving from the devil. The devil is trying to do mischief within your mind, within your consciousness. He's trying to control you and so on and so forth. So they may use a term like familiar spirits and so on and so forth, right? And so all of these are self-limiting types of situations that we encounter. And so journey to a mentor is the process of how do we sort of rid ourselves of these of this conditioning that doesn't really serve us, that doesn't really allow us to raise our vibrational frequency, so to speak, to the highest level? How do we move ourselves out of deception? We can also create our own self-deception because we misperceive reality. You know, your conditioning can cause you to become very paranoid. It can cause you to become very fearful. It can cause you to become very distrustful in a maladaptive way. So it may be healthy to be skeptical. It may be healthy not to trust things just on, you know, on first view, to question things. That all those things are very healthy, but then oftentimes we go overboard and we become overly distrustful in a manner that causes us to misperceive what is being presented. So it's just like the little boy who cried wolf, right? After a while, the little boy kept telling people that the wolf was there, and the wolf wasn't there because he was trying to have fun and trick the people. And so finally, when the wolf came, the people didn't believe him. And then the wolf did his thing, you know. So, so so we have to keep a balance in everything that we do. And so going into a mentor means that we're doing a self-evaluation. We are assessing our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, the things that we think that we know. We are, in the practice of yoga, at least from the way I teach yoga, way I perceive yoga, we are always in a constant state of reevaluation. We are questioning our beliefs. We are questioning our perceptions of things. And we want to put our perceptions, our beliefs, the things that we believe that we know, that we think that we know, we put them to the test. And we test them for reliability and for validity. Is what I am believing, if is it is what I am saying, are the things that I profess valid or not? Are these things that I profess, are these ideas that I profess and I talk about and I use as a statement of who I am, are they things that I have self-generated through my own experience, through my own analysis, or are these things that are my reaction to the conditioning that I am receiving from the external reality?
So, something that you really said that, struck me is, we're talking about the subconscious and also the dark matter in the universe. And these are very similar, as above, so below, right? We are mirror images of nature. And I think a lot of times when people hear, their subconscious, they kind of think of, they think of things that they're just not thinking about, right? But even so, we only use, I think it's like 4 to 8% of our brain, uh, consciously at one time, right? So we're only consciously, like unconsciously, I'm blinking. Unconsciously, I'm breathing right now. Unconsciously, my heart is beating, right? So there's so many things that are happening within our bodies that our subconscious is actually dealing with versus our actual conscious state. So when we go into this meditative state, or when anyone goes into meditation, but specifically when we go into meditation in kemetic yoga, we're doing, like you said, trying to reflect and reprogram to let go. A lot of times people say yoga is about controlling, but in kemetic yoga, from your teachings, I've really learned that this is really about letting go of a lot of things, letting go from this identity of stress, this identity of being busy, this identity of being less than because of whatever class that you're in. So can you talk a little bit more about, you're talking about hypnosis. I think people get kind of scared or a little bit weary about that term as well, although it is through this sort of hypnotic or resuqued, right, being awake while you're asleep, this sort of state where you can actually reprogram your mind and your beliefs, and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, let me say this too. In terms of the brain and how much of your brain that you're using at one particular time. I used to say that all the time that we only use 10% of the brain. We got to use other. But in actuality, that's a misnomer. At any one time, the brain is something that has a tremendous amount of capacity. To this day, there is not a machine, like say a robotic machine, that can duplicate all the different functions of the human brain. The human brain is phenomenal, um, has a phenomenal ability for computational, you know, um, mechanics, to do things on a computational level to control things. So at any one particular time, in order to keep your body alive, to keep you breathing, to keep your blood circulation going, to keep all your nerves and everything happening on a normal level, your brain only needs about 10% of its capacity, so to speak, right? But so it's not like you can use 100% of your brain, because you don't really need to use 100%. You're going to be using different parts of the brain, different levels of brain energy at different points in time to achieve the particular task that that's in front of you, right? So, so I would just say that just a sidelight. Um, what was the other part of your question?
Yeah, I was just saying that, to be in a hypnotic or in
Yeah.
hypnosis, right?
Mhm.
How can that actually help us when we slow down our heart, slow down, our conscious mind, and just, and being in that state, how can we actually reprogram our subconscious? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, when we talk about hypnosis, right? And I would have to, I wasn't going to really talk about that word, so um, I would have to go back and sort of break the word down, like hypnosis. What does that what does that word mean? But you already know that the end of the word gnosis is referring to knowing, referring to knowledge, right? Knowing something. So you are going inside in order to discover some information, right? And when we have the ability to hypnotize ourselves. Hypnosis is very interesting. We are being hypnotized often. I would say. I would dare to say that we, as people living in a post-industrial, technological, Western society, we are often being hypnotized. We are often having our attention grabbed and focusing on a particular item, because we do this all the time. We all the time. I don't care where you are, what country I go to, everybody is doing this. I don't care how poor the people are, everybody got one of these. It may be beat up, old, it may be having less function, but everybody is doing like this all the time. Excuse me. So, so what is hypnosis? Hypnosis is simply being open to suggestion. So, hypnosis is taking you into a place where you relax, where you block out all the other thoughts that may be coming into your field of awareness, and then having other information being placed into your consciousness into your subconscious through what you can call suggestion. Okay, so you're receiving a suggestion. And so we live in a culture, we live in a society on a global level, a post-industrial, technological, and then I would say information society where we are constantly being bombarded by information. It's just like when you watch that movie with Tom Cruise in it. What was that movie with where he was um where they would these little psychic beings were predicting the future, right? Like the future, they were looking for future crimes that can happen in the future. And so Tom Cruise is in this movie that was supposed to be taking place in the future, and everything was programmed to him where even if he went into the mall, he had his own little personal holograms that would pop up to give advertising just to him. So let's say you go and you look at a website about something, and then you go on Facebook and ads for that particular website that you just happen to have went to pops up, in your feed, out of nowhere. It's like I was just looking at a website about that. Now it's in my feed because you got algorithms that are doing this, right? And so the hope, the reason why they do that because they hope that they can continue to reinforce with these images. They want to reinforce these images, this information, this awareness of this particular product into your consciousness to get you to click, 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 put your credit card number in there and purchase that. Okay? Because they have an understanding of how the subconscious mind operates. Okay? And so you put something in front of a person enough times that there's a higher chance that they will take the bait and that they will move their body, move their mind in a way that they're going to purchase that item or go into engage in the behavior that they want you to engage in. So understanding this, we say, well, how can we use yoga? How can we use our own mind? How can we use our own faculties to create a condition by which we can program ourselves? We can program our own subconscious. So instead of being the subject of these external forces that are trying to get us to behave and think and move in a certain way so that they can extract money out of us, so they can get us to move and behave in a certain way that's going to be beneficial to the system that we live under in a way that may be against our own best interests. If they were trying to get us to do things that was in our best interest, that'd be one thing. But they're often trying to move us to do things not just through consumerism, but political action, social action, cultural action, consumption that are often against our own self-interest. So you see the way that certain people vote. They vote out of racist ideas, racist ideology. They vote out of the fact that they want to be above somebody else, or they vote because of how somebody told them the Bible wants women to be. Women shouldn't be able to control their own body, and this is murder if they do this, they do that, or they should, if you wear a condom, you killing sperm, and so you're gonna go to hell. All kind of just crazy stuff. While at the same time, so they'll vote for somebody who won't even, who wants to cut their Medicare, their food stamps, all this stuff, but they voting for these reasons that don't make any sense. So so the whole idea, so to me, the whole idea of yoga, the whole idea of going into the subconscious, of doing this self-examination is so that you can start to move towards creating your own reality. Reality is created on the subconscious level. So that's where we have to begin at. We are not able to transform society until we start to move towards the transformation of the individual on a subconscious level. Okay. So if we want to create a mass movement of people going in a certain direction, people starting to behave in ways that are going to validate their own self-interest and help them to behave in ways that's going to allow them to live their life in a self-sustaining way, to live their life in a way that is not going to destroy nature. You see hurricanes wiping out Fort Myers, Florida. The whole city is gone. A whole city in Florida is flooded away, you know. And this is not in some place that we never heard of. This is in Fort Myers, Florida. And people still don't get it. We've been talking about, climate change for, I've been aware of it since the early 70s when I first started college, in high school, and virtually nothing has been done. We were looking at the idea that these ice caps were going to melt and that places was going to become submerged, and they just let them melt. You know,
That's so right.
yeah.
That's so right. And people have been aware of things. What you said, things have not necessarily changed. And speaking of what's going on in Florida, right? That is that's nature. That is nature showing it one of its strengths and its powers. If you see a roof just getting lifted up by wind, not because something hit it, but just wind is lifting it up, right? It's just showing how powerful the force of nature, or just the force of that elemental wind is. And so I know one of the things you wanted to talk about today was the netjeru, and you were saying that nature is just another way to say the hidden one, or these hidden forces. Can you explain a little bit more to our audience what the netjeru is and some misconceptions about the netjeru?
Well, let's do this. Let's get the slideshow going.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so you can control that. Okay, good. Now, this image that you're looking at, this is from the This is from the walls of a temple in ancient Egypt, from Kemet, which is called the Temple of Abydos. I don't know. When I'm talking, I always lose some of these words, but Abydos. It's called Abydos. The Kemetic word, I don't like to use the Greek. So if you're looking up Abydos, you'll be able to find it. But the actual Kemetic term for this temple is called Abtu, Abtu. Okay? And at this temple of Abtu or Abydos, there is the most beautiful, masterful set of images that show the connection between the human being and the divine source of everything. Okay. So certain people may say, well, they may want to say, well, this is a particular netjeru or deity, and this is a particular person who is interacting with this particular deity, and it has all these different meanings that are very specific to this image. But what I'm going to emphasize is that the image on the left, the person on the left, is a female representation of the divine, of a divine force. In ancient Kemet, they used the term netjeru. And so we don't know how they pronounced the vowel sounds. So when you study the Medu Netjer, the sacred language of ancient Kemet, you see Neteru written NTRU because we don't really know exactly how the vowel sounds were spoken because that language is not spoken anymore, for various reasons. And um, so the word Neteru refers to what European scholarship would call deities, right? But we're not talking about deities. We're talking about representations of divine energy,
Mm-hmm.
representations of divine, of nature
Mm-hmm.
being manifested in particular ways. And so the word netter, if you saw NTR as opposed to NTRU, netter refers to the overall creator, the overall everything that we call nature. So the word nature, Nature, is derived from the ancient Kemetic word, which is netter. Netter is a word that refers to the all encompassing creative force from which everything that we know, everything that we experience, everything that we see, everything that exists is a manifestation that emerges from netter. Okay. And so people use words like God, people use words like creator, and so on and so forth, right?
Source. Yeah.
Yeah. But nature is just however you want to perceive the source of everything, the all encompassing everything. And so Neteru would be an individual expression. When we look at nature, we see expressions of nature. We see a tree, we see a flower, we see the moon, we see the sun, we see the sea, the ocean, a lake, a river. We see a bumblebee, we see a scorpion, so on and so forth. All of these are different individual expressions of the one. Okay. And so this is the way that the African mind, in my opinion, operates. Okay. So the European scholars and theologians, they want to say that the ancient people of Kemet believed in many, many gods. That they worshiped this god, they was worshiping the sun, they worshiped the moon, they worship a rock. They say African people are what they call animist, that they're worshiping different inanimate objects, right? But that is not true. This is their misperception because they have not gone to Amenta to study their own self. They don't know what's happening inside of themselves. They're like children misperceiving what's going on around them. And so they misperceive and they misrepresent and they distort our culture. Okay. And so they say that we are worshiping different gods and goddesses with a small g. And they say this is why we were evil because we was worshiping all of these false gods and not the true God who they say is the true God. But in reality, people of Africa believe in one source of everything, which you can call the creator, which you can call netter. Every language in Africa has a different name for this one all encompassing force from which everything that we know emerges. Okay? You can go to Nigeria and go into the Yoruba language, and they have a name, you know. So they recognize the different parts of nature, the ways that nature expresses itself. The water, the ocean is a very powerful force. The sun is a very powerful force that has immense effects upon our life and upon everything that happens in the world around us. So you acknowledge that, you understand that. It's like a scientist becomes a scientist who only studies the sun, a scientist who only studies a stellar physicist, or astrophysicist. They only study how stars come into being. They're not worshiping the stars. The star is not the only aspect of nature that exists. An oceanographer who studies the ocean doesn't believe that the ocean is the only thing that exists, but they see that this ocean is such an extremely important phenomenon that exists in nature that they're going to spend their life studying this. And so the netjeru are different expressions of the world of phenomena, the phenomenal world, the world that we live in, that we can see manifested on a physical level. So we see the sun, we see the moon, we see the sky, we see the earth, we see the water, we see the wind, the air. We see all of these different manifestations of nature. And so we put a name to these different manifestations of nature. And we talk about the attributes that these different aspects of nature have. What effects do they have? What are they doing? Right? And we also understand that there's aspects of reality that we call the domain of the mind. And so the domain of the mind is going to be how we think, thought. It's going to be the subconscious mind. It's going to be emotions. It's going to be emotions from love to hate, that have a name. And so we use symbolic images to represent all of these different types of phenomenon, right? Whether it's conscious or subconscious, whether it's physical or non-physical, we use different images to represent these things. We use so this is the world of symbolism, right? One of the few European scholars who understood this is a man named Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book called The Mask of God, and he talked about this whole idea that the face of God is expressed in many different ways in different cultures, and that we are using a biased, westernized way of looking at things, a westernized Judeo-Christian methodology of looking at other people's cultures. Okay, so when we look at this image here, okay, because I hate to be going on so long about stuff, but I have to break it down into a way that it establishes what we're going to talk about next. Okay.
Absolutely.
And it
Thank
takes
you.
time to learn these things, right?
Mhm.
You can't just say, oh, I'm going to just learn this and what is the answer, blah, blah. It takes time to absorb and to learn these things. It took me decades and decades just to even come to the conclusions of the things that I'm talking about. Okay, so when we look at this image, we are seeing the mother goddess, the mother, and she is giving to the human. So let's look at her not in terms of, we can give her the name of Aset, or perhaps she's Heteru. We would have to look at the writing on the wall, so to speak, and see what it says to learn who specifically is this lady sitting on this throne. But whoever she is sending from her hand two different symbolic representations, and she's sending from her hand to the human. So you have a divine source, you have a divinity sending something to the nose of this human being. Now, the first thing you want to know is that this human being got black skin. This is an African man. This is not, this is not, this is African. So white folks, the racist scholars have been trying to tell us that the people of ancient Kemet was white. Just go there and look at the walls. You see that they black. They presented themselves as being black. Okay? And so she is sending from her hand two symbols. One is called the Ankh, which is spelled Ankh. The Ankh means life, Life, life. And then on the side, it's hard to see these things. That's why you have to take time to really study. But on each side of that Ankh, which is coming from her hand, is what's called Was. So Was is spelled W-A-S. And Was is a symbol for power. So in this image, it is saying that the divine source, this divine feminine source of power, this feminine source of nature, is sending life into the nose of the human. And that human is receiving life and power through the nose, which is the breath, because we receive life through the breath, through our nostrils. So this is telling you so many different things about reality and about what's real and what's not real. So we receive from the divine source through our nostrils. We receive the air. The air in ancient Kemet was called shu, S-H-U, shu. So the word itself even sounds like air, shu, right? And so we see this interaction, a very intimate, in my opinion, a very intimate interaction between the divinity and the human. He has his hand on her arm as she sends the life force from herself to him. She has one hand behind his head, which can have a variety of different symbolic representation, and also even on a physiological level in terms of what's in the back of the head, what organs, what parts of the brain is in the back of the head, the medulla oblongata, right? And what is the function of that part of the brain? We can read a whole lot of things into this image. But the main thing that you want to see is that there is this intimacy between the human and the divine, because the divine is where we come from. We all come from this source. So she represents the divine mother, and she is giving her child, which is us, the human. He represents all of us. He's not just the king. He represents all of humanity. He is our representative. And she is a representative of all of nature, the divine. And she is providing this life force from her to him. So human beings receive our divine energy that allows us to be alive on this planet from a divine source. So this is not worshiping all kind of different entities and doing this and that, like the like the religious, like certain types of religious people try to say. This is a masterpiece. If we were in control of our own culture and we had our museum, something like this would be sitting up in the Louvre, like where they have the Mona Lisa, or something like that. If we had the equivalent of that in our own culture, but luckily this is actually intact in Kemet, in the original temple where it was built. Okay. And so there's lots and lots of symbolism here. On top of her head, I came, I didn't really come to break this down into really, really deep detail. So, but on top of her head, if somebody can see, they can see that she has a sun disk, what's called an antenna on top of her head. So think about images that you see of the Virgin Mary, who they call the Virgin Mary, um, or images of when you look in the Bible or you look in Christian religious books, and you see that the saints or the holy people, they have halos over their head. Where did that concept of the halo come from? The word halo comes from the word helios. Helios is the Greek word for sun. And so in this case of this image we're looking at an image of a person or a representation of the divine with a aten. The word aten is another word for sun, sun. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. So maybe go to the next one. So in this next one, we see on the left, we see the ancient Kemetic netjeru, whose name is Asar. If you look at him, you see that his body is wrapped like a sahu. The word sahu, Sahu, is the proper name for what people call a mummy, Mummy. Mummy is not a Kemetic word. It's not the original word. It's called sahu. Okay? And so he is in his sahu form. Asar is on the left. His skin is green. It's not because he's from outer space or he's an alien or none of this stuff. His skin is green because he represents nature. He represents the cycles of nature. How nature goes through different cycles, right? You go from winter to fall. You go from, summer to fall to winter to spring, back to summer again. And you see how vegetation goes through these different cycles of going away and then coming back again in the spring and so on and so forth, right? And so his green color represents the cycles of nature, because that's what Asar represents. He represents resurrection. He represents rebirth. So in the story of Asar, which was created and spoken and written in an allegorical manner by our ancestors, it was not written to be literal. It was written as an allegory to give a message, to give an understanding of certain aspects of reality, of how the mind works, how the subconscious mind works, how we should behave, how we should think, and so on and so forth. So our ancestors always spoke in an allegorical manner in order to give us messages, to give us meaning about life. And so we see that standing in front of our Asar, we see the king, the pharaoh. And we know this is the king because he has a beard, which is straight. He has that beard, which is a part of his regalia, something that he wears to demonstrate his authority and his status, his station as the king, right? And so in this image, it's trying to convey the idea that I am the king because I am given authority from the divine source to be the king, right? I derive my authority from Asar. Asar is a representation of the divine source of everything. So I have a divine kingship. This is what the Europeans, we just witnessed the demise or the death of the Queen of England. And we saw them going through all these rituals and so on and so forth. All of this, much of what they were doing, much of the things that they believe are things that are taken directly from Kemet. Okay, you can go to the next. So this is an image of the king, the pharaoh, sitting in what I call a pharaonic position because they sit on the throne. They sit with the back straight. They sit with the legs bent at the knees at a 90-degree angle with the feet flat on the floor. You know, this, in my opinion, this is a meditative position. You know, if you go to the, just interestingly, if you go to Nation of Islam, you go to one of their meetings or their service that they have, you see everybody sits exactly like this. They sit up straight. They don't let you, you're not supposed to be slouching and bending over and all that kind of stuff. You're supposed to sit in this pharaonic type of manner, right? When you see the prayers that they do in Islam, they doing things that you see in the images from Kemet. Go to the next one, please. This is a man sitting in a squatting position. Okay. The Egyptologists, they call this a block sculpture because it's a sculpture that was made from one solid block of stone. And so he's squatting. Okay. This is the image of a man extending the left. He's walking with the left foot forward. Now you're going to find many, many different interpretations, or at least a few different interpretations about what this represents. Why is it that probably 90% of all the statues you see in Kemet, you see the person striding forward with the left foot, leading with the left foot? One theory is that the left side of the body is controlled by the right side of the brain. And the right brain is considered to be the feminine brain. The left brain is considered to be the masculine brain. When we say feminine and masculine, we're not talking about like a man and a woman. We're just using those words to represent different qualities. So feminine brain means that part of your that part of your consciousness that perceives reality on a holistic level, from a holistic perspective, meaning that the feminine brain, the right brain, processes information in a way that allows you to see the interconnectedness between everything that's in existence. So you can see that things interconnect, that things um, you know, um, interact with each other, that everything is not separate, that everything is connected. And there's a meaning, excuse me, there's a fly in here. There's a meaning behind everything that that goes on, right? So the artist who is being artistic, who is being creative, they gravitate more towards the right brain because the right brain is providing those functions. The mathematician, on the other hand, gravitates more from the left brain. The left brain controls the right side of the body. So this is illustrated by the fact that if a person had a stroke and the right side of their brain would be damaged by the stroke, then the left side of the body would have either partial or total paralysis, right? The damage, the incapacity would manifest on the left side. If the left brain had the damage, the body would be affected on the right side. So, so on and so forth. So the left brain is your mathematical brain. The left brain is your logical brain. The left brain is what allows you to see things in sequential sequentially. So you see that one thing follows the next. And so you see things in a linear type of way. Both of these functions are necessary for you to be a fully functioning person. But the theory is that in African cultures, of which ancient Kemet was an African culture, that the right side of the brain is the dominant side of the brain, and that feminine, um, so this feminine idea, this idea of feminine energy, not feminine the way that we think about male and female feminine and so on and so forth, but feminine only in the sense of like yin and yang, hard and soft, open and closed, so on and so forth, right? So, so our culture is one that is able to see the interconnectedness between all things, that everything comes from one single source. When we view time as cycles, not in a straight line. The European says you got past, present, future. That's it. They say that the past is over. It cannot be reproduced. You cannot revisit the past. The future is unknowable, right? Because the future has not happened yet. But from the African perspective, we say that the mind has the capacity to revisit the past and also to perceive what is going to happen in the future. Okay? Now, the Europeans who are in positions of power, they know this, but they try to teach the regular people something different. So they'll use astrologers to try to predict what the markets are going to do. They'll use astrologers to try to predict what moves they need to make, to make money and so on and so forth. And they try to tell everybody else, oh, that astrology stuff, that prediction stuff, that's the devil, that's evil. But they're using all this stuff. When you saw that Queen of England pass away, they was using all kind of different stuff that they telling everybody else they shouldn't be dealing with. So
Most definitely. And also in their depictions of their, when we see the forefathers, I remember when I was growing up, the so-called forefathers of America, when I was growing up, they would talk about put your right foot forward, right? And they would have, Benjamin Franklin with his right foot. And they said that they did that because the ladies liked the calves or something like that. So you would put your right foot forward. So like, you can flex your calf muscle. But then, when you had mentioned this, when we start the Ma'aka sequence, we start with the left. We do everything with the left first.
right.
So that we can activate the right side of our brain, because even so many of us are programmed to write with our right hand instead of our left hand, so there's all these things that are trying to push us more towards that, what they would say is the logical side. And it might be, the logical side, but it's really the side that separates things, that sees each word in the paragraph as separate versus, the right side of our brain that sees the whole paragraph, that sees the context of what it is that we're talking about, that holistic function. So this is definitely, this is a great piece of knowledge to learn. I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yeah. Now this is, some of this is I'm just want to go through certain concepts or certain ideas. Now, when you look at this slide here, this is a wooden carving that still exists from the third dynasty of ancient Kemet. So this man's name is Hesi Ra, and he is the chief of dentists and the chief of physicians of ancient Kemet. So he would be the equivalent of the Surgeon General of the United States. He's in charge of all the medical stuff in Kemet. He's the top doctor, okay? And this is from the third, dynasty. And this man was doing dentistry. Now, the third dynasty, you had the first dynasty, the second dynasty, and the third dynasty. The third dynasty was before they even built the pyramids of Giza. So this king, this pharaoh, for whom he worked, his name was Dozier. Okay, and Dozier was the king or the pharaoh who was in power at the time when they built the first pyramid, which is called the Step Pyramid, which was designed by a man named Imhotep, who we're going to talk about. And so I put this here simply to show that at the earliest periods of ancient Kemetic history, they portrayed themselves as black people with nappy hair, you know. And this is important because when you look at certain Facebook posts that certain people do, like even that I may do, you're going to find white people, Arabs, and other folks who live in Egypt who are going to try to argue that the ancient Egyptians was white. They were Caucasian, so-called Caucasian, which is a nonsensical word. Um, and they were Arabs and Asiatic and so on and so forth. They were black and they portrayed themselves as black. And so this illustrates that. This is almost 5,000 years old. So this is going back to the earliest part of the Kemetic history. Okay, let's go to the next. This is Peset Het, or Peset Het, or Peset. I don't know if I'm saying her name right, but I have her picture on my wall in my bedroom because I love this image. And she's from around 2700 BCE. So this is about 4,000 years old. And she was the chief. The way that they try to translate her name, her title, was that she was the chief of the female doctors. But I don't think that's a proper translation. I believe that she was the chief doctor, period. And that she just happened to be a female. So, of course, they're going to put the feminine usage of her title. So that doesn't mean that she was the chief of all the female doctors. She was the chief of all the doctors. You know, that's my theory, you know, and so it could be tested and somebody can argue with me and so on and so forth, right? But I'm bringing this up in reference to this whole idea of, like, you know, we got this movie out, right, called The Woman King, and this was very controversial, right, because they said that the woman couldn't. I meant to put another picture. I forgot to put that photo, but that the woman couldn't be a king and so on and so forth. In ancient Kemet, you know, women in Africa, period, women were in charge of much stuff, right? It was not unusual for a woman to be in charge. When we think about the word king and queen, we are thinking about it from a European perspective. From a European perspective, the queen was a subservient person to the king. And when the king died, you know, they had to find a successor who was a male. So we're superimposing all of this European concepts without really having an understanding of the data that comes from our own culture. And so women were in every position of power and authority in ancient Africa and in traditional Africa. An example of this is when Europeans first started to come into Africa and say they would conquer a particular section or take over a particular area that they wanted to colonize. And so they would capture the king and they would say, okay, we got the king. Now we're going to tell the king to tell everybody else what to do. So they capture the king. They tell the king, tell the people to do this, tell the people to do that. And the people would just ignore him, right? Because the Europeans did not understand how the culture worked. The king could not just command everybody to do whatever he wanted them to do just because he was the king. He had to have consultation with the council of women. He had to have consultation with the councils of elders. There were different bodies, different groups of people in authority, especially women, that the king had to consult with and have get advice from before he could just do anything. He couldn't just do whatever he wanted to do just because he was the king and just start wars and do this and do that. The way that they knew, the way that the Europeans did. So, um,
Yeah, and this is so very powerful because you were talking about African cultures using the right side of the brain, which you had referenced is more of that feminine force, right? And so people a lot of the time say that African cultures are and were matriarchal, right? And and so when the Europeans realized that they were wrong about capturing the king, they had to kind of switch their tactics. And so instead, they had to destroy the power of the woman, right? They had to say, they had to switch the culture. So they had to say, okay, women, you know how to do herbs, you know how to do this kind of stuff. That's witchcraft. Or, women, they had to really turn everything on its head to destroy these African cultures that were matriarchal, right? They had to say, even in certain religions, it said that the woman is the reason why man fell into sin, right? They always blame the woman even for bleeding. Like if you are on your period, that you are dirty and you can't come into the temple or do certain things. But even that aspect is another divine aspect. And that picture, the first picture that you showed us, it was that feminine force that was giving man or giving humankind that that the ankh and the was, right? The life force and the power, right? And so the woman is the divine sanctioning force, but they had to flip that on its head and move to this patriarchal society, like you were saying. The king just orders people around without proper counsel. But that counsel was from women who were holistic, who wanted the best for the entire society. It wasn't just one person who was in power and flexing because they were in power. They had their own their own processes for running their own culture, which we're so far away from.
yeah. Well, the whole idea of patriarchy, it's so much older. What the Europeans did when they came into Africa and they couldn't figure out what the mechanisms of control were, they invented a academic um, an academic um, um,
Term or
no, they created something called anthropology.
okay.
I can think of the right time, but anthropology is what they created. And anthropology is the study of culture, and so that's where anthropology came from. So that's like sociology.
Right.
Sociology evolved as a way of studying Black people. So here in Chicago, at the University of Chicago, you had a person named Robert E. Park, who was a white guy, and with his collaborator E. Franklin Frazier, who was Black, they studied the Black family, the Negro family, as they called it, and they studied the dynamics of the Great Migration from the South into the urban areas of the North and other parts of the U.S. So I would say I would say that was their response. The idea of patriarchy is from the earliest times of European development, right? They have always been patriarchal. They have always put the male, as the head. Now there's actually been, some just to be fair, there's actually been some, some cultures within the European matrix that were, that gave, women certain rights and certain authority and so on and so forth, But overall, the European ethic is to put the women down and to subjugate the woman. And like you say, this is codified in their religious doctrine of the women being responsible for the fall of man, the women being punished. She has to have a period because that's her punishment for causing the fall of man. That's why they call it. They don't say humanity. They say man.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. And so this goes back a long time. What you were saying about the women being, working with the herbs and stuff in ancient Europe before you had Christianity. Um, the term witch, it comes from the word watch it. The
Mm-hmm.
watch it is a sort of Germanic word for the countryside, for people who live in the land. So if you was from the watch it, you became a witch because those people who still lived on the land and they was looking at nature. They was basically practicing those things that they learned from Africans. They were called witches. And so that word witch became something that was negative. An old crone with a long nose with warts on it and all that kind of, and she
Mm-hmm.
stirring a pot with
Mm-hmm.
in it. What's in
Mm-hmm.
that pot? The pot is the herbs.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pot is the potions that she's using
Mm-hmm.
to heal people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this was started when Christianity was created.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Bible itself promotes patriarchy. The Bible itself, whether it's the Old Testament or the New Testament, promotes the domination of men over women. And if we look at what's happening in the United States now, where they're passing all of these laws that's taking control over the body of a woman away from her and put it into the hands of a male. This is all an expression. This is all being driven by European white racist fundamentalism, and it's directed to the idea that white people are not having enough babies. And they think that by getting rid of abortion rights, that they're going to increase their birth rate. But that doesn't even make any sense statistically because it ain't like everybody who get pregnant go kill their baby. They have a low fertility rate. White people all over the planet Earth have a low fertility rate because of certain internal dynamics that's happening within their culture and that's happening within them physiologically. And people of color, black people, brown people, yellow people, they just keep on pumping them out. And so this whole debate about my immigration, this whole debate about abortion rights is all centered around the fact that these overt racist type of people are afraid
Right.
that they not, so they all the brown people, the Mexicans is coming in, and Mexicans got, they got the stereotype of the
Right.
Mexican got 15 Mexicans in a car coming over here, and all that
Right.
kind of stuff. Most of
And
these people come over here on airplanes.
right. And for those of us in the audience, there's another Chicagoan that goes by the name of Dr. Frances Cress, and she talks about this, right? About the very, I wouldn't say, but the right wing, or the very the zealot sort of white people, right, that are looking to preserve white culture, right? Because if they want their children and their grandchildren to still be white, then you can't be marrying or having no kids with anybody who is brown or melanated, right? So how do they um, uh, work towards keeping that white culture, right? And so that's some knowledge that Dr. Francis Kress has put out there through the ISIS papers and also through some YouTube videos as well. But you guys are listening to The Journey of Amenta, and Master Yasir talked about what Amenta means in the subconscious. So we're talking about all of these things because there's so much that we still have to break through from our conscious, right? We have to really expand our mind and understand how we've already been programmed. So that's why we're talking about all these different things. And yes, they all have to do with yoga. They all have to do with our meditation, coming into a meditative state. And again, just expanding our consciousness. So we do this podcast every Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time. So definitely stay tuned for our next podcast as well. And just know that you should definitely bring your notebook next time. So you're not writing down certain things. He's giving us all these gems, right? From the Germanic language, from history, from concepts and cultures, and literally reading and interpreting these things on the walls of ancient Kemet that are still there. He's traveled to Kemet so many times, to Brazil, to the UK, to Jamaica and other islands. So this man is not just talking off of the top of his head, right? He's able to speak in this way because not only has he done the actual studies, but he's actually gone and talked to people and experienced these things, right? We can't just learn from reading in a book or just watching on YouTube. We have to actually go and actually experience, talk to people, see what they think, and then actually come with the conclusions. And not only that, but actually to meditate. Because when you meditate, you are intuiting, you are allowing, again, all of these misconceptions that are in your mind, to allow them to let go, so that you can download this information from the netjeru, or the netjeru, as he was speaking in the beginning. So you can find this recording on YouTube. His YouTube channel is called Yasir Rahotep. You can also find him on Facebook at Yasir Rahotep. He has multiple groups right now. We're using yoga skills, the School of Kemetic Yoga. So you can find that group as well. He's also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and TikTok. So definitely just look up Kemetic Yoga Skills and you will find him. His name is Yasir Rahotep. So we're going to go back to the slide. We only got a few minutes here. So,
okay, I'll try to make it quick.
Yes, let me go to the next one.
Okay, now this is the great Imhotep. Now look at this man. This man is black. This man is from ancient. I have to keep emphasizing that this is that the ancient people of Kemet.
I don't know if you froze just for me, but you froze a little bit. But yeah, so this is Imhotep. He's an engineer, an extremely smart man, right? A lot of the Europeans still structured their buildings or tried to imitate, right, their buildings from this man, Imhotep. I'm just trying to stall and wait until Master Yasir comes back. But yes, as you can see, he has woolly hair. And you can see that from his head. You can see that from his beard, right? And you can also see that from his skin tone, that not only was he black just because we think this, but because this is how they have created him and how they perceived themselves. Okay.
Am I back now?
Yes, you're back. I didn't say much. Great.
This technology, boy, they be trying to do stuff.
Right, trying to cut you off.
Yeah, man.
Yes, but continue, please.
Okay, you can hear me okay, right?
I can hear you great. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. So I always have to emphasize the fact that these people were black, because there has one of the biggest conspiracy. People talk about conspiracies, this, all one of the greatest conspiracies that they have created is the idea that the people of ancient Kemet were white, and that the people of the ancient world period, who created all these different aspects of civilization, was white. Imhotep, his name means he who comes in peace. the word Hotep means peace. Imhotep was the world's greatest genius. He was the creator of the concept of the pyramid. He built the first pyramid and the first um, large stone building of any kind on the planet Earth. It's built at a place called Saqqara, okay, which is in Kemet, in the third dynasty under the pharaoh named Dozier. Um, he is the father of medicine. He was an architect, an engineer, and a physician, and he was also a person who was a priest, a scribe, and he was the main advisor. He was the chief advisor to the king that he worked under. Okay. And so you look at him, you look at his face, you look at his features, you look at his hair. He was a brother. Okay. Now, the other part is that now, we have a movement of certain people who are trying to use the term Hotep in a derogatory type of way. And it really pisses me off because number one, my name is Hotep, and number two, it's such a stupid thing to say and do. There are people in the world, there are black people in the world who say things that don't make sense, who say things that are inappropriate, but call those people out for for their individual selves. You don't label them a Hotep. It doesn't even make any sense because Hotep refers to the word peace from ancient Kemet. So how is a person who happens to be a Muslim who says things that they shouldn't say a Hotep? How is a person who's a Christian who says things that he shouldn't say, but because he's referencing ancient African civilization, why did they call him a Hotep? It doesn't make any sense. So it's a so people need to educate themselves who about the word Hotep. The word Hotep is in reference to giving an offering of peace to the Creator, to God, to the divine source. Okay, let's go to the next one. I put this here because I wanted to talk about the snake, the serpent, the wajet, which is in the forehead of this image, right? So you often see in some of the other images you saw a lot of serpents. The serpent is called wajet. There's many different manifestations and uses of the image of the snake in ancient Kemet. But here we see this snake coming out of the forehead of the king, right? And what does that represent? That represents the idea that of consciousness, of opening up this third eye, of moving ourselves to this place called Amenta. Okay. And so when we practice kemetic yoga, we practice in such a way that we use our controlled deep breathing to raise this energy, this serpent energy, up from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, to the place they call Aten, to the middle of the forehead, which is called Wajet. Okay. Um, in ancient Kemet, they had an understanding that we associate with Chinese medicine and with Indian yoga, that you have these channels of energy, you have these internalized um, internal channels in your body through which life force and energy flows. This is a Kemetic or ancient Egyptian concept and idea that life force and energy moves through these channels. When you go get an acupuncture treatment, the acupuncture treatment is based upon the theory that we have these energy channels that move through our body, and that the energy becomes blocked. And when the energy becomes blocked, you develop symptoms of illness. This is an ancient African or ancient Kemetic concept, and it can be found in the literature of Kemet. Let's go to the next. This is some pictures I took in August when I was in Kemet. And I was just impressed by this particular tomb because it just has all of these black folks on it. you know, let's go to the next. You could just see that they was just. I mean, look at that, and you see people arguing that these people was white, that they were Arabs, that they was this and an other. These people was black African people who look just like Africans from any other part of Africa. Let's go to the next. Look how dark these people are. Let's go to the next. This is walking into. This is in a This is in a part of the Great Pyramid, the Great Merkut of Kemet, called the Grand Gallery. And so this is just showing, I mean, these stones that you're looking at on the inside, these stones weigh up to 40 tons a piece. Okay. And they're situated in such a way. You see how they're like how one sticks out over the neck. They do that in order to support the weight. To know to do that takes great engineering skill. To know that that's how you should lay the stones, so to keep them from to support the weight. It's not something that you just know automatically off the top of your head. Okay, this is in Kemet. This is just me doing the pose of immortality, with the Merkut in the background. Let's go to the next. This is something I wanted to talk about. This is a tablet of Narmer. This is a tablet which is showing Narmer. Narmer is the first king of Kemet. He is sometimes called Aha, Aha, Aha. So what he's doing in this image, which I'm going to go through quickly, and I ain't going to go into a lot of detail, he is actually shown in a ceremonial way of defeating his enemy. The enemy that he's defeating is a man from Asia who is a representative of people who came from Asia, invaded into Kemet, and occupied the land. And so he is forcing them off of the land because they did not even come in peace. They came as occupiers, as colonizers. So they had to leave. And so when he did this, he united Upper and Lower Kemet. And so this is where the word Semaitawi comes from. The Semaitawi means uniting the two lands. Okay. And so in Kemet, the idea that the upper part of Kemet, which is the southern part, not the northern part, the southern part, which is where everybody comes from, where the black folks came from. They came from Africa, from deeper into Africa. You got to go south. Uniting Upper Kemet with Lower Kemet. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is showing the unification. So when you see these two animals, these kind of mythological type of animals, because animals don't really have long necks like that. But you see there's been a symbolic way of saying we are uniting the two lands, Upper and Lower Kemet, into one. You can also see a reference to the medical caduceus, right? You kind of see that? The medical symbol where you have the staff and you have the two snakes going up.
Okay.
So some people have used this image to say that this is also a representation for yoga, because yoga is making reference to the idea of uniting or yoking or bringing into harmony, bringing it to balance, so on and so forth. We'll see. This image is of me sitting on a boat, going down the Hapi River, going down the Nile, the sunset, teaching yoga on the cruise boat. So on our trips to Kemet, we do yoga on the deck of the boat. Mostly in the evening when it gets a little bit cooler. Okay.
Yes, and I think that's something that we should talk about really quickly before we end today's podcast. When will you be going to Kemet and perhaps Ghana as well this year?
Okay, so we're going to we're leaving on November 23rd, and we still have plenty of slots open for anybody who wants to go. So we go to Kemet from November 23rd until December 4th, and then December 4th we go to Ghana. So a person can go, and we go to Ghana until December 15th. So you can either go to Egypt alone, or to Ghana alone, or you can go to Egypt and Ghana. And we do this twice a year. In August, I go to both of these countries with Jabari and Anika Osaze. And in November and December, we do a yoga skills trip to both of these countries. Also, in January of this year, not this year, January of 2023, we are planning to have a trip to Brazil. I just came back from
Ooh.
Brazil, where we trained like 20, we certified 27 people in kemetic yoga. And so I'm putting together a tour of Bahia, okay, the African part of Brazil. So we're going to be doing that. And then, but before we go to Brazil, we're going to go to Jamaica. So Jamaica is January 4th until the 14th. Okay. And that's up on our website also. So all of these great opportunities to go places, to do things, to experience things that, are life changing are available to
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. And for all the melanated people in our audience, and even if you're not, this is great history to know, and also to be able to meet your cousins really in the diaspora, right? When you go to all these people, you're gonna be like, man, that looks like my neighbor, that looks like my cousin, and you get to really connect with these with the different people in all these different countries, and also with their culture, with their music, with the words that they say and the expressions, and maybe even how that they greet you, Master Yasir, when you were in Brazil this last time, how they greeted you in that circle, and they were drumming and they were singing and clapping and chanting. That's a very African thing, and I know that felt really, really great. And so people can actually experience that same thing when they travel with you. And if you guys were listening, throughout this podcast, Master Yasir is obviously very knowledgeable. So you're going to go to these places not just to experience the beauty and the people there, but you're really going to know where you are, right? And when you know your history, you have so much more respect, not only for for the actual history itself, but for your own person, right? To know where you came from and what your ancestors were able to gather and to write and to bring forth. This is really amazing history that we just learned, even just now looking at the pictures from when you went on these different trips. And I'm sure that it's a different feeling when we're actually there with you. So I have a goal to definitely travel with you as well. So we hope that I'll be able to make that happen. But go to kemeticyogaskills.com. You can see all the various trips that he will be going on. And also, if you want to get certified in this type of yoga so that you can teach others, you can also go online to Kemetic Yoga Skills as well. He has an online course that is very easy to take. It's self-paced, and it is all from videos that he has recorded himself. And you also have access to his email, so you can ask him questions at any time. His Yoga Skills studio is in Bronzeville at 4507 South Indiana Avenue. So if you're in Chicago, definitely stop by. We have classes. The class schedule is on the website. We have classes on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So plenty of classes for you to come in and learn this knowledge from the master. So just to end this broadcast, I want to say thank you so much, Master Yasira Hotep, for giving us your time and your wisdom and your expertise. And we'll see you and everyone in the audience again next Friday at 2. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Okay, thank you, Amawi and Hotep. And I gotta give a shout out to my friend friend. His name is Charles Friend. He sent something
Okay.
on the message.
Okay, great.
Yeah, but he's in Chicago. We studied yoga together many
Okay.
decades ago.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charles. See you all next week. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a great evening.
Okay, Hotep.
Hotep.